Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. You've been listening to the work of one of the most innovative, most talented, and most respected keyboard players in the history of recorded music. From his 1960s work with the Nice to his classic 70s work with Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and beyond, the artistry of Keith Emerson truly defies classification. Unlike most players who tend to specialize, Keith has made a point of mastering every keyboard instrument. He's an accomplished organist, he plays piano as well as any classical artist, and his innovative use of the synthesizer has set a standard which those who followed have yet to match. Not only has he mastered every keyboard instrument, he's also mastered every musical genre, from rock to classical, from jazz to ragtime, and all points in between. And as if all that wasn't enough, he's also widely considered to be one of rock's great showmen. Rather than rest on his laurels, he has continued to challenge himself musically, the most recent example being a CD he released in 2012 called The Three Fates Project, in which he joined forces with conductor Turje Mikkelsen and the Munich Radio Orchestra to perform some ambitious arrangements of classic ELP work, along with some high-quality new material. Before we get him on the line, let's listen to a track from the album. It's originally appeared on the 1972 Trilogy album by ELP. Here is the 2012 reimagining of The Endless Enigma, Part 2. Joining me on the phone from Santa Monica, California, is Keith Emerson. Welcome.
Hey, hi, Dan.
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to the Three Fates project because I think it strikes the perfect balance between the classy, timeless quality of an orchestra and the raw energy of a good rock band. Most people would probably assume that you were the driving force behind it, but that's actually not the case. It was someone else's idea, and you were initially skeptical about it. So, since we're talking about an English artist and a German orchestra, naturally the story begins in China. So, why don't you pick it up there for us?
Well, yes, let me... it's always been something that I've wanted to do. And, of course, if you go back to the early 60s, when I had the band The Nice, I was possibly one of the first band leaders in the rock field that amalgamated rock music with the classics, albeit that some of it wasn't original at the very beginning, but it did in the end. I mean, in 1969 I was commissioned to write the Five Bridges Suite. I was commissioned by the Newcastle Arts Council, in fact, and so I wrote the Five Bridges Suite and performed that at Fairfield Hall, Croydon. Now, around about the same time, John Lord wrote his concerto for group and orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
So there was quite a lot of crossovers going on at that particular time. Whether or not we were all influenced by, say, the Beatles, utilizing sitars and everything else, and just changing the whole aspect and making lengthier pieces of music, what is now become known as the dreaded concept album.
Yes.
Funny enough, I heard a little chuckle from you there, but my idea of that was that it really saved making announcements on stage, rather than you do small 3-minute numbers and you go, thank you very much, and now we'd like to play She Sits Amongst the Cabbages and Peas. And thank you very much, after the applause of 3 minutes, and next number is called, they call my dog Biscuit, because it's been away for so long. 3-minute pieces, and, well, that was it, and I think that was back in the period when the audience liked to dance, and, of course, with the way things turned around, you didn't really dance at the concerts by the Nice, and although some did,
Mm-hmm.
But it was cooler actually to possibly sit down, smoke pot, and get stoned out of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
The most amazing thing was that most of the composers in that period actually didn't indulge. I certainly didn't. But a lot, I was always asked, did you indulge at that particular time in smoking pot? And no, God, number one, I wouldn't have been able to play the sort of music that I was writing under any sort of influence. So that was it. So, it kind of forged the way forward, really. And when the 70s arrived and I formed Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I still adapted. I was still very much influenced by classical music, and of course did various adaptations. But at first, well, not at first, but all the way through the course of adaptations of classical composers, I would get their permission. And it would not be like doing something, say, as jovial or tongue-in-cheek as something like Nut Rocker, which was not my idea. That was by B. Bumble and the Stingers. That was the original.
That's right, yeah.
But I only incorporated it into ELP's set just to give it some lightheartedness, and in order for the audience to sort of like work it out for themselves, the difference between how to not adulterate the classics, and then using Nut Rocker, and this is the extreme way how to adulterate it.
Yeah.
But in every case where I did utilize classical composers, I always paid strict attention to their original intentions, and made sure I pretty much stayed right along with their original intentions. I mean, apart from adding an occasional shuffle rhythm here and there, and obviously not having a full orchestra, I just utilized what I had, and stayed very true to the orchestrations. But it was further on down the line where I really, after I'd written pieces, say, like Tarkus, and while I was writing them, and I did compose Tarkus at the piano, I was thinking, well, at some point this would make a wonderful piece for orchestra to play. But I thought, well, which orchestra could possibly play it, in 1972? I'd already had bad experiences with orchestras, although that didn't deter me. I still thought that, at some point, I'm sure the tide will turn. I'm sure orchestras will get a little bit more responsive. And, I wrote my piano concerto, I think that was in 1975, and performed it with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And it wasn't an easy job at first, because there was still this bureaucracy between the classical orchestra and musicians who were put in the class of being simply a rock musician. So, the classical, there was kind of a sort of a war between the two. It was almost pretty similar to, but not as aggressive as, say, rival football teams. It was more discreet than that, but it was very difficult to get acceptance. And when Frank Zappa was alive, he was a good friend of mine. He approached me he said, how do you deal with this British bureaucracy? How do you deal with orchestras? They are so difficult. So all I could really say to Frank Zappa was, well, it's not easy, Frank, But I said, first of all, you might find it easier if you cleaned up some of your lyrics, if you want the BBC orchestra to play it.
Good point, yeah.
It's if you try to orchestrate a piece of music and it's called Why Does It Hurt When I Pee, well, you've got to understand you're going to get some aggravation. Because these guys are, some of them are in their 60s. And, well, of course, I'm well approaching my 70s now. So, and I don't know, I guess for some reason, that's why, my compositions and my orchestrations and compositions are just being widely accepted, not only in Europe, but I've just come back from Japan, where the Tokyo Philharmonic played Tarkus to a sold-out Tokyo Opera House.
Wow!
So that was a huge honor for me.